Scotchy Bourbon boys, raisins in hell and making some noise. Yeah, we're the Scotchy Bourbon boys. We're here to have fun and we hope you enjoy. We're here to have fun.
What developed up to what you're doing now, and then talk about the difference now. Doing, I mean, you've done so many of these types of podcasts and stuff like that, right? I mean, thousands.
I mean, I do usually the one that has to ask the questions. It's, when you turn the tables,
it's not something that you do all the time.
Not all the time.
Yeah,
get used to it though.
Okay, but as far as because it just changed. I mean, it's got to be really different doing this part. Yeah. Even being here on that level, you're here on both levels, but really that level. Right? Yeah,
that's the brain we have to grow.
All right. Let's make sure.
I know the feeling.
All right, so we have a 30-second spot that's just going to play. We can actually.
Is that recording?
Oh yeah.
That's recording. All right. That Apple microphone, I couldn't believe this other podcast was having this giant whatever, and I listened to the audio, and whatever reason that microphone shoots this way and was picking up everything better than even this. I was like, it was just, wow. I was surprised.
Technology,
isn't it?
It's Steve Jobs' legacy.
Yeah.
He's trying to get his. Eventually, you're just going to know your father.
Probably. Yeah. There's a great, there's another podcast with Foundering, and there's one on Amazon, the story. There's a whole episode dedicated to Alexa and how they were able to figure out how to do basically like voice commands and be able to basically pick it up from anywhere in the room, because before that, the technology never really existed. And they said how they spent about a year in development. They would have people just go to like these Airbnbs, and they would put microphones everywhere and use like that data to start capturing to figure out exactly like how can they basically triangulate a voice to a specific area. It's amazing.
Cool. It's scary.
It's crazy technology.
Yeah, it's scary.
All right, so it plays a 30-second spot for French sponsors us. Okay, so and then I'll just play this. You get to hear it. We actually have a theme song. Do you know Kenny Fuller from Luca Mariano?
No, but I know the brand.
Yeah. Well, they were touring, and he plays guitar, and he's in their all-Americana band and everything. He sings. And he was on the podcast with them. He's like, oh yeah, how about a theme song? So he made us a theme song.
Yeah, wrote us our own theme song.
That's awesome. And when you hear it, it's just like sometimes.
Old Americana.
How about you do that?
It's called the Old Americana.
Yeah, Old Americana band. Yeah.
Yeah, your voice is so much better than his.
Oh my God. So one thing, I'm always horrible at names. And so even now, I know
Kenny Coleman.
I know this.
There you go.
But I get anxiety over that. So I'm sitting here going, it's Kenny Coleman.
Oh, he's right down.
Yeah, he's right here. Yeah. All right, here we go.
Dant Crossing, Gethsemane, Kentucky. Timeless hospitality that stirs the spirit. Dant Crossing is a one-of-a-kind destination for unforgettable weddings, memorable corporate events, day trips, and weekend getaways. The pastoral campus is anchored by Log Still Distillery and includes an amphitheater that seats 2,000, a 12-acre lake for fishing, and unique lodging options, creating an immersive experience that's rooted in the community and culture of our little slice of Kentucky. More attractions will open soon at Dant Crossing, including our 21,000 square foot distillery, which we will have the ability to produce 15,000 barrels of spirit each year, a network of wooded walking trails, fully functional private train depot, farm-to-table restaurant, and the Legacy, a premier wedding and events venue. Whether you're looking to host an event, book a stay, or reserve a tasting, we're ready to welcome you. Learn more at dantcrossing.com.
This is Alan Bishop, head alchemist at Spirits of French Lick. Be on the lookout for a brand new bottled and bond Solomon Scott Rye whiskey. Made from a mash composed of 65% rye, 35% corn, and 5% victory malt. This 5-year-old 100 proof rye whiskey is a throwback to early 1800s style rye whiskeys of the Ohio Valley. Named after the legendary Daisy Spring Mill distillery owner turned moonshiner Solomon Scott of Paoli, Indiana. Remember, drink responsibly and never drink and drive.
Drinking bourbon, sipping on some scotch. We get a little wild, but it's sure fun to watch. We love what we do, we're drinking every brew. Man, we talk some shit, but we're telling the truth. Yeah, we're the Scotchy Bourbon Boys, raisins in hell and making some noise. Yeah, we're the Scotchy Bourbon Boys, we're here to have fun and we hope you enjoy. We're here to have fun, yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Woo!
Yes.
Another day of Kentucky Bourbon Festival. The Scotchy
Yes.
Bourbon Boys are back here. But we have ourselves. We got Super Nash. We got Whiskey. We got Roxy, myself, Tiny. And we got a very special guest that Roxy's going to introduce.
No, I thought I was introducing the old Americana band.
Oh,
Okay, so
Kenny
this
Coleman
is Kenny Coleman.
Bourbon
We want to
Pursuit
thank.
United.
Yes.
Yes, we have to be more
the brands
specific
now.
on that, dear.
okay.
But our intro is the Luca Mariano's Old Americana Band featuring Kenny Fuller, and this is Kenny Coleman.
It's just too many Kennys. That's what it comes down to.
Well,
So when you said
wait.
introduce Kenny, I,
Okay.
you know.
Well,
the other Kenny seems a lot more talented than me. So.
But you always said you like self-fulfilling prophecy said we were going to screw it up, so therefore we screwed it up.
Yeah, but for once, I didn't screw it up.
Wait, somehow you screwed that on me.
But also,
I'll
let's
take
get
it,
his
I'll
brand
take it.
out here. Bourbon Pursuit United.
So yeah, we've got, of course, everybody kind of knows Bourbon Pursuit, the podcast, and then back in 2018 is when we launched our own spirits company for Pursuit Spirits, and then from there we've kind of grown. We got a few different brands, but yes, Pursuit United is sort of the brand we're building and growing and kind of getting out here, and that's why we were at the show today to all weekend to kind of really help promote that and talk about it and get people to really try it.
All right.
Yeah.
Is that going very well for you?
Yeah, I mean, this has been great. It's been just good exposure for us, especially knowing that we have a pretty large already podcast audience that's out there. And so a lot of people come here, they know exactly who we are, but they've never tried our whiskey before. And that's great because we can get those people that are really the bourbon enthusiasts, but we've also got to find the people that haven't heard us before, the people that don't listen to podcasts. I mean, we all know that podcasting is a pretty big niche, and so to make sure you find people that A, you like whiskey, B, you like bourbon, and you have to like podcasts. Like, it's a really hard niche to kind of fit in. So we've got to be
get pretty narrow.
So we got to grow beyond that a little bit.
Yeah, that's but the niche that podcasting is really good for starting a bourbon brand.
I would say we got lucky. There was somebody that came over to me the other day. We got plenty of brands around here, and they go, "What you're doing is very unique. The fact that you built an audience before you built the brand, because usually people have to go build the brand and then build the audience. So we had a very unique aspect to be able to do that, to be able to come out to market relatively quickly and have some early successes.
Well, yeah, that I exactly what you said. That's how. I mean, when I first started podcasting, which was in 2019, so we've only been doing this for a little bit, but you had already been the podcast. I mean, it was just like so. So I always when I work out on the elliptical, I'm just always watching other people's podcasts.
That's like once a month.
No, he was talking about it. I mean,
That's every day.
but I mean, even you've got Bourbon Pursuit, but you have the Bourbon Roundtable, which really brings in a lot of people who have whiskey groups and then are in the industry. I mean, when you're talking about who's on there, I mean, they're the two. If you're on the internet and you're either buying from whiskey off the internet as far as legally from a liquor store, or the what is it? See, once again,
there's guys from Breaking, the Rye era, Fred's on it usually, and stuff like that. And thank you for the compliment. It was one of those things that maybe it's just a first mover kind of thing. Really, we always look at Whiskey Cast as kind of the Mark Leslie really paved the way for us. But he talked about everything. It's Scotch, it's Japanese whiskey, it's just the whole whiskey category. We just kind of narrowly focused on bourbon, which I guess thankfully we've seen the trajectory of where bourbon's gone over the past few years, and that's really catapulted and skyrocketed in regards to just everybody's just infatuated with it. And so it's great to have that. Yeah, we had a little bit of first mover, and then from there, I mean, you've been in this business for a while. You've got to figure out how do you pivot, how do you make interesting content, how do you figure out how do you bring on the right guests, the right people. We always look at stats. You look at stats for episodes. You see which ones perform well, which ones don't perform well, and you go, okay, well, we're not going to talk about this anymore. We're going to start moving and doing this. And yeah, you just kind of have to look at the data and read it and figure out exactly how are you going to tailor it.
Well,
this guy here spends a lot of time in bed at night looking at analytics. I'm like, you got to go to bed. You got to go to bed. You got to go to bed. He's like, no, I got to see who's watching and where they're watching.
Sometimes analytics is a bummer because you think you did this great podcast, it just does all right, and then you go out on a limb on something and call it something maybe you shouldn't have called it or whatever, and all of a sudden it's got triple the downloads. It's just going crazy, and you're just like, why?
There's what I mean. There's keywords. There's things that you have to hit on. Yeah, we've actually gone through and we've renamed every single podcast at the very beginning. We did a whole, I would say, rebranding. We had to re-platform a lot of our episodes, and so as a part of that, because remember, episode 2 was just called Harlan Wheatley. And so instead of just being Harlan Wheatley, we had to make something that was a little more catchy. Yeah.
Well, what's tell them about your, the one that is the biggest one is
we did Heaven's Door. When Heaven's Door came out with that triple little 375 milliliter.
Yeah.
With
all the brands.
I was like,
keyworded it is why.
Well, not just that.
You don't need to say the other part.
But that's what it is.
He called it. What did you call the podcast?
I called it. Pandora picked it up because Heaven's Door, Bob Dylan's brand of whiskey in a.
But he had a really catchy name for it.
Well, that was what it was. Heaven's Door, Bob Dylan's brand of whiskey.
Opening Heaven's Door or something like that.
What?
Wasn't it called Opening Heaven's Door or?
It could have been something. Okay, let's get in. But I started out not liking a lot of ryes because I'm not a fan of when you get into the ryes that are almost a vegetable, pickle, celery kind of thing. It's horrible to me.
Yeah.
But we always say, just because I don't like it doesn't mean you shouldn't like it. I don't mind making Bloody Marys with it. You just put that bourbon in, and you don't even have to add the rest of the stuff half the time.
Tomato juice will cover up a lot of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I actually was drinking that one, and I loved the bourbon and the double Tennessee whiskey in there, but the rye came up, and I think I called it Old Man's Urine. So, and now it's the largest podcast.
He didn't think. He knows he did.
He knows he did.
I mean, so then you get these analytics, and then every time, it seems like anytime I'm critical of something, even, I love bourbon. I mean, even bad bourbon, I like. There's only better bourbons. And now, most people can come up with a bourbon. When I tell them that, I'll give you a bourbon you don't like, but
we get plenty of stuff shipped our way that we never review because of that reason.
Well, yeah, and that's what I found, that if it's not something that's you don't want to go out there and badmouth stuff. You know what I mean? You kind of talk to them and say, hey, this might be really young, and then send them on their way to make older whiskey, right?
It's great for cocktails. I guess that's the go-to if people say it's not good.
That's why they made Diet Coke.
Yeah, see, but I mean, for us, we never anticipated on being a review podcast. We didn't want to do that at all. Right. But our fan base and our listeners, they wanted us to start reviewing stuff, and the brands were already sending us stuff because they all just want exposure. Yeah, and so we said, well, let's go ahead and let's figure out something unique. And the way that we did it is on Tuesdays, that's our whiskey quickies, right?
Yeah.
Because you can go on YouTube, you go find plenty of 30-minute reviews on a particular whiskey. You know when you taste something within the first 5 seconds if you like it or not, maybe even a half second.
Yeah.
So we said, let's try to make this in a 60-second review, because beyond that, it's just fluff. We don't need it anymore.
Right.
And that was so cool. That's what I enjoy about that.
Yeah, it's straight to the point.
Straight
Yeah,
to the
he's got
point,
Tiny's
quick
5
and
minute
easy.
tastings.
Well,
For a lot of people that don't have a
Or
lot
10
of
minute
time,
tastings.
Yeah.
too, that it works in great
Usually
for
15 or 20 minutes.
Yeah, I do the 10-minute, but then there's the sponsors in the end, and it's the whole thing. So yeah, but I try and keep the review under 10 minutes. But same thing, I saw what you were doing. But what's been working for us lately is I've been doing Facebook Reels, and all of a sudden those took off.
Yeah,
and
those 9 seconds.
I mean, so now I look at the world in a different way. I'm just like, how can I get this out in 9 seconds? So you do a little quick thing, and
Well, you should be good at that.
Yeah. Thanks.
He was waiting for it.
Toss it softball. You know who he is, right? He's
Throw a high fastball right there.
I'm just the
Don't throw
pitcher.
Carl high fastballs over the plate.
Yeah, that was like right down the middle. I'm like going, man, that is a slow pitch.
So one more podcast question. You get so much whiskey, and you have, you do review it, but what's your collection like? I mean, what do you do with this? I mean, you just taste it. You can't drink it all, otherwise we'd be all dead.
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, it's
Well,
not
we're
only get sent a
well
bunch of stuff, but then also now we're buying tons of bourbon. And so we've got our own stuff that's happening. But yeah, the collection's grown. I don't know, maybe 1,000 or 2,000 bottles that are somewhere around, scattered around the house. It's grown from the bar. Then there was too many, so now they're lined across the floor in the bar. And then I've got some massive shelves from Costco that are basically, it's like 7 or 8 bottles deep and 4 height. And even that's not enough. So I'm just thankful that we're thankful the position that we're in. Like, don't get me wrong, like it's cool to get to try everything, but yes, there's people come over and like, hey, take on the bottle. What do you like?
What do you want?
And
Yeah,
I see you're
you
wearing
want
a
this?
wedding ring, so how does the significant other feel about that?
Yeah, she stays out of the basement as much as she
Okay,
can. She goes every time I come down there, I just have a panic attack. It's
Yeah,
just
well-
the anxiety of just having too much stuff.
Yeah, we keep buying shelves. And he keeps filling the shelves. I said, maybe we should stop buying shelves. Because the more shelves you buy, the more...
Because you look at it and you're like, it's
Oh, yeah,
empty.
this
I
is
could
empty.
fill that.
You know?
Oh,
And now we need a new
I can
shelf
totally
after
relate
coming home
to
today.
how your collection has grown and bottles sitting all over the floor. And I just got mine
Oh,
off.
beautiful
Yeah,
shelf.
and I've just built some shelves and got them all off the floor. But I hadn't got my closets empty or the
Yeah.
kitchen cabinets empty that
It's,
I emptied out my girlfriend's dishes and stuff, and she got mad about.
yeah.
And so, because that's how I came into the group, I was the bottle finder and the whiskey finder and sending up samples to him
Yeah,
and
a
all
case
that.
of whiskey
that
would
all.
arrive at our door. Martin
Yeah.
said, here, try these.
And all of a sudden, here comes bottles and sample bottles and all that. And here Jeff's like, oh my gosh, you should see the
He's
sample
even
bottles.
so awesome that when he pours me samples of stuff,
Now I print the little
and now he
labels
prints
on
the
the sample
label.
bottle.
So Russell's 13 shows up with mini label.
That's really nice of you. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm too lazy. I just get a wine marker.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
write
it's
the
just
dates on
That's
there.
how I started out
Yeah.
with him. But then they get smudged and he couldn't read them. What is this? Heck, I don't know.
I
know. So when he started
now,
doing that,
now he had to do a blind tasting with it and figure it out. So that's why I started printing them out for
Smart
him.
move.
Yeah, Martin's got more sample bottles than a neurologist. Just saying. It's a little scary.
So I have to admit, early on, the little bit of news that I ever had about the industry came from you, because you always do what's happening during the week. So you talk about it. I'd look a little bit more into some of it, but once, when I was podcasting, at least once or twice, you'd be talking about that. Like, hey, that's a good thing. So you're giving me ideas. Thank you.
Well, that's what we're here for, sharing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that actually came out of, I wouldn't say it was necessity, but we looked at it as something that we could basically have a line extension of the podcast, if you will. So I said, we already have our Tuesday Whiskey Quickies. Our Thursdays is our main episodes. That's where we bring on all the guests in the industry and kind of talk about what's happening, the who's who of bourbon, if you will. But early on, I was, we all get press releases. You get stuff that are being sent to you because they want more exposure. And so I would read the bourbon news before the podcast started. And as we started doing it, I realized, geez, we're like 10 minutes worth of news even before the podcast starts. And I was trimming out a bunch of stuff. So I said, and I polled our audience on Patreon, and I said, what would be more interesting? Do you think we should keep it there, or should we dedicate a whole show just to bourbon news every week? And that's kind of what they said, do the whole show. So that's how This Week in Bourbon is born. And we record that every single Wednesday, and it's out on every single Friday morning. And it's just looking at press releases, anything that's interesting that pops on Facebook, or any just news that kind of just comes in my feed. If I find it interesting and it's somewhat bourbon related, then we'll talk about it. And that's sort of, and it's been great because a lot of people in the industry actually listen to it because they're actually off doing their own day job. They've got to focus on
Right.
they got to focus on getting product out. They can't sit there and scroll the news feed every single day. So as they're doing their commute to work every morning, they'll put on This Week in Bourbon and just kind of see what the competition's up to.
Yeah,
Wow, that's cool.
definitely. And, I just start getting press releases because through here we met Tracy. Then Tracy invited. We went over to the Kentucky Owl.
Yep.
Which was pretty cool. And then so she's been sending me press releases, and that made me really excited. Like, oh, you're kind of
You're getting in the
You're
circle.
legit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really, yes. I can have some information.
You've been invited.
So that was kind of exciting.
So Pursuit United, you started the brand, and how does that happen? How do you go from a podcaster to, basically having a product in the marketplace and
Being in debt. Yeah, I can tell you about that. So it all kind of started because back in, it was a little bit before, sometime in 2018, I guess we'll say, we had talked about a brand on the show. It's called Doc 52s. And this was a sourced whiskey that was going to be coming directly from the liquor store. So the liquor store with their own house label, stuff like that. We said, this is pretty cool, but this isn't anything new. You go back to the old days, grocery store chains, pharmacies, they would have their own private label whiskey back then.
Johnny Walker.
So we talked about that for a little bit, and then didn't think anything of it. About a week and a half later, this guy calls me up and he goes, hey, we talked about this brand. I built that. Would you be interested in starting your own brand? I didn't really think about it, but tell me more. So he goes, well, I'm a barrel broker in Memphis, Tennessee, and I'll give you kind of a really cool opportunity to be able to go and select some barrels and kind of what you want. And we said, all right, well, what do you have? What are you working with? He goes, well, I've got some MGP, some younger stuff there. I got some young Kentucky stuff. He goes, but most of my stuff is aged Tennessee bourbon. We're like, we're out. We don't want to do it. Like, we're not going down this path. And he goes, well, I'm going to be in Louisville in a few weeks, and I'll bring some barrel samples up. You can try them. If you don't like them, fine. We'll go our separate ways. But if so, let me know. We can keep talking. So he comes. Ryan and I, we go out. We meet him at Hell or High Water. It's this cocktail bar in downtown Louisville. It's a kind of a speakeasy vibe. Gives us the samples, and we take them home. The very next day, Ryan's already kind of giddy about it. I am too, to try to figure out what's going on here. Because he was kind of giving a lay of the land of what they're doing. And by the way, they're now Blue Note is who is their brand that they create. So anyway, we were kind of giddy about the whole opportunity of it. And knowing that we weren't exposed to much stuff in Tennessee, namely different stuff. We weren't really exposed to it that much at that point. We just know that a lot of people said they didn't like it because of, everybody has a preconceived notion. And we said, well, let's do this. Let's grab a bourbon we both agree that is really good. And if anybody's beaten, we're to go all in. So we grabbed Henry McKenna Tank because that was the year that it just went bananas.
Yeah.
Fred made it like the whiskey of the world or whatever it was. And we said, if any of these beat Henry McKenna Tank, good to go. So, of course, one of them we really enjoyed. And that we said, all right, let's go ahead and head down this path. So as a part of that, we said, well, go ahead and reserve us that barrel. We'll come down to Memphis. And he gave us a pretty raw deal when it came down to it. So the way the whiskey market, the source whiskey market works is that, you say you want to start the Scotchy Bourbon Boys brand. Well, you need to go and talk to a barrel broker. And you say, hey, they'll say, what do they have in stock? And they'll say, some Indiana stuff, some Kentucky stuff. You got to figure out the age, and we'll say the price. We'll say the price just for a ballpark, and say 4-year-old MGP for $3,000 a barrel. We'll just say that's about an average price right now, which prices have gone astronomical lately, so that could change. But we'll say it's that, and we say, well, okay, well, $4,000 a barrel, or sorry, $3,000 a barrel. I need 10 barrels to start my brand. Go ahead and start doing the math. Go ahead, write the check. When those barrels come in, you can have an idea what they taste like. They'll send you a sample, but you don't get to individually taste every single one of these barrels. We all know that barrels all taste a little unique, but you're stuck with whatever comes in. You also know that angel share also varies. So you could get 180 bottles of that barrel, or you can get 80 bottles out of that barrel. You're still paying $3,000 for that barrel, right? So it's a super risky way to kind of get into the business. But he gave us the opportunity to actually go, and he rolled out, the first time we were there, I think 10 or 15 barrels, and we got to hand select every single barrel we wanted. And we left with, I think, 3 barrels that day. And we realized, like, oh shit, we're going to get $15,000 to buy all this stuff. Like that was the first time. And then we were kind of a little bit in over our heads, but it was the same exact time that Blake was also starting Seal Box, and so we had to figure out exactly how was this going to work, because we couldn't go just the traditional market route of opening up in one state and telling our national audience that, hey, you got to go here and buy it in the store. But Blake was really, we were his stress test when that first came out. So we started doing those single barrels. And those single barrels were great. We had the opportunity, as years went on, we did it for about 2 years of actually going down to Memphis. And at that point, he would roll out around 40 or 60 barrels. And we'd taste through those in around 2 days. And we'd start slapping stickers and everything we wanted. But we were almost too picky to a degree when we were doing it, because we only kept around 10 to 15% of what was rolled out for us. Looking back, we passed on so many like 14 to 15-year-old barrels that I'm just kicking myself, because now you can't get them. It's impossible to get them. But there was such good stuff, a lot of great oak character. We did those single barrels, and those were Pursuit series. We did those for a few years until our guy that hooked us up with all this, he goes, listen, these single barrels are a pain in the ass. They're killing us. It's like, you all need to come out with some sort of ash, some sort of blended product that we can kind of take out. And he was like, yeah, you're right, because we can't scale single barrels. We can't really build a business.
Nope.
It's just too much.
They're done, one and done.
Yeah, and it's like you get 180 bottles out of it. How do you get that to 5 states? You don't, right? You've got to figure out how do you scale it, how do you grow this to be a sustainable business. And the problem that we had is that when we were starting to figure out what do we want to start blending with, there wasn't much on the open market. You had your MGPs, you had some 12-year-old Barton, but we didn't want to be another MGP. There's people doing that already. The 12-year-old Barton, it was, phenomenal whiskey, but at the end of the day, is once you start getting that, your minimum dollar on the shelf has to be at least $100 a bottle, maybe closer to $150. You're making a lot better margin at $200. So we said, we're not going to be that great either. We just can't do that. So we spent about a year in development trying to work and partner with different distilleries and figure out exactly how can we find the stuff. So it actually all pretty much started because our broker had some barrels from this other Tennessee distillery that wasn't potential, and they were about 3.5 years old. Because I think you guys should go try this. It's what time sauce. They're like, okay, sure. Like, you're going to tell me some 3.5-year-old stuff from Tennessee is going to be that good. So he sent us a sample, and I tell you what, we were like pretty blown away with it. We said, this is something we can start with. But we didn't want to just go and get one product, put it in a bottle, like a bunch of Kentucky Bourbons. We're not going to start another brand on Tennessee bourbon. We need something in here. So we had the Tennessee product, and we really liked it. And we had already had a relationship with Finger Lakes System in New York. We really liked their product too, so we started blending some of the Finger Lakes, the New York and Tennessee together. But we were like, God, we can't do this again. Like, I'm out with a blend that says Tennessee and New York. Like, we're going to get laughed at. So we had to figure out what else is out there. So we started, every once in a while you get a phone call, and we had one from another broker, and he goes, hey, I've got some Heaven Hill barrels if you're interested. So I said, sure, send us a sample. We spent the weekend blending with it. We're like, all right, I think we have something here. Let's start off with an order of like 6 barrels, and that's what we can use to kind of like do our first test release with this. On Monday, we make the phone call, like, hey, can we start off with 6 barrels? And he goes, sorry guys, they're all sold out. Like, this is a pain in the ass. Like, we can't rely on the source. Right. Like, we've got to figure out how we're going to own our destiny. And that's when we figured, let's start making phone calls directly to the sources and working with it. So we made a phone call because we needed a Kentucky component, so we called Bourbons and Rye.
Good call.
Yeah.
And we got really lucky. It was one of those really refreshing thing because they roll out the red carpet for us. They said, hey, here's about 7 or 8 different mash bills we're working with. You can go ahead, take some samples, start playing with them. And that's when we started dialing in a few different things. And our first release was that Tennessee component with Bourbons and Bourbon Company as well as Finger Lakes Distilling. And that was a 2,000-bottle release. It was our very first Pursuit United. And again, that United concept was something that as we were leaving Memphis one time, we just started just spitting off names and figuring out, like, what's going to stick. And we just liked the word because it meant something to us, because it's not just one distillery. It's not just MGP. It's something that we can kind of create our own bespoke blend that's unique to us, that can't be recreated by anybody else, right? So we have our own proprietary amounts that are going to the blend, our proof, everything like that is something that's unique to us that nobody else can replicate. And so now we're growing that. So we're spending around $1.2 million every single year right now in new fill barrels between all of our partner distilleries to help grow this brand. So and we did that. Plus, we already bought the aged inventory. So when we make these phone calls, we're like, okay, we need 4-year, 3-year, 2-year, 1-year new make. So we need everything now so we can start scaling little by little every year. And then in 2026 is the year we can really kind of blow the doors off, because that's when our new make will kind of come online and we can really bottle it, go to 4 states that we're in now. That's the story.
So,
Great. I mean, you were asking, but before you guys were getting into that, Ryan was right. He was going out, and you guys were going on barrel picks, and a lot of people wanted, to be like you said, wanted to be a part of it. So Ryan really kind of got into that. I mean, he was just going and doing. Like you guys were doing a lot of barrel picks. Some days he was just like testing through stuff, and then when you guys started doing this, he was really.
He went all in. He was, now he's like buying beakers and all sorts of things. So, yeah, I mean,
that's for the Pursuit United Meth Line.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is, yeah. We have an RV that we ride around
I've seen that's a successful business model.
Yeah,
it works out really well for people.
So as a part of the podcast, with Patreon, we had our own barrel picking club as a part of it, and that grew. And that only started because we picked one barrel, and all of a sudden people went crazy for it. And we said, "All right, I think we should probably do more of these." And so we found a retail partner out of Southern California, and Keg and Bottle's been a great partner with us. And so he gave us all of his allocation and said, "Here," I said, "We'll bring you the audience. You give us your barrel picks." So it's been a great partnership that we've been doing now for over a few years. And as a part of that, we just need to go and we do about 50 barrel picks a year. Just say 50 barrels, which equivalents probably maybe 25 to 30 barrel picks. We get to go and select multiples when we do this. And we felt like we were getting pretty damn good at picking barrels. Yeah. And it was a really fun thing. We still do it to this day. It never gets old going to Four Roses or Wild Turkey or getting samples shipped to you and sitting there trying somebody else's whiskey and picking something out that's going to be unique to you. And then, so that was picking barrels. But then as we started getting into the blending side, that's when Ryan really went all into it. Yeah. And the way that this whole United project started a little bit before COVID happened. We had already kind of started down that path, but of course COVID gave us a lot of free time to go and figure out how we're going to build this. And we used to have blend-offs between Ryan and I. We had all the components, and we would try to. I mean, it was about a year in development, just trying to figure out what is the right components, what are the mash bills, what are the proof levels, and so on and so forth. But Ryan, he kicked my ass every single time, and I said, I'm tossing my hands up. I'll just be the spreadsheets guy. I'll figure out the business aspect of it. You create the product, and so it's been a real big good yin and yang kind of relationship that we've had, because we balance each other's strengths and weaknesses out really well when it comes to that. He owns his own few businesses, so when I can plan out our roadmap to 2030, but I can't do P&L's balance sheet for the life of me, right? So, but he knows how to do all that. So, it's one of those things that, I have a decent palate, so I keep his blends in check. So he'll come to me, even this week, he brought some 2 experiments, and I was like, we're not going to do this. This tastes like shit. So it was like, okay, sounds good. So it's one of those things that we balance each other out.
It's interesting to me. If you had to pick a business to get into, bourbon has to be one of the worst. Because
very capital.
As soon as you get that brand new, White Dog sitting in a barrel, that's not a product you can sell for 4, 5, 6, and if you really want quality, 8, 10 years. It's just so capital intensive.
It is.
How does a couple guys on a podcast overcome the capital? I mean, the capital investment is just massive.
It is.
If you want to try and scale quickly.
So that's why we can't scale quickly. So we don't have the money, and we haven't taken a distribution from the company yet. Every dollar that's been made through all of the single barrels that we've selected, of the Pursuit series that we've done over the past few years, every dollar has gone back into buying more products, more inventory, and trying to just keep growing. So we had some money to buy some initial barrels, but when we actually started figuring out, all right, new make costs, looking and saying, okay, well, we definitely don't have $1 million. How do we go and do this? So we did a few rounds of friends, family, and fools that wanted to invest in us. So we just do a straight loan with all of that. Nothing is, me and Ryan still own 100% of the business. So everything is just on a loan. And so we'll repay back that note in 4.5 years when some of those barrels are dumped and bottled. And we can get the cash in to go ahead and pay off that debt. We've recently been able to secure a $6 million line of credit with a bank. And so now we're working with a local bank here in Bardstown to go ahead and start doing that. So we've successfully raised around $8 million so far to be able to make this happen.
That's
So,
great. Yeah.
I mean,
and it's good.
Yeah.
And by the way, it's not because like we're good guys and they just wanted to do it. It's the barrels are great collateral in this environment.
It's like if you don't do it, they're there.
Yeah, it's like the bank will do better if we fail because those barrels are worth more than us paying the interest back.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I'm just not another pretty face. I was a banker for 16 years. So as you're talking, I'm going, barrel collateral.
Yeah.
Not bad.
Yeah. But honestly, it took a while
But it's being helped by a third party, so it's not like you can steal it. Okay, I'm good for that.
because banks, they loan money on cows. They loan money on the horses and all other kind of stuff. It's like, our barrel's not going to die because a coyote ate it in the middle of the night. It's not going to die because you gave it some bad antibiotics, right? It's a little bit more of a safer investment. It's just we had to.
You need lightning to strike for it to be bad.
Don't break that too bad juju on it.
Yeah.
Rock on fake wood.
That's like just listening to that, and then also as far as raising money. I mean, just think about it. You're raising money, and this is a product. Whereas before, you were the product talking, and you could raise money.
Yes.
I just always am amazed at as the stuff goes across, and people just keep donating to chat on to with you guys on the live chats and everything, and how So it had to be something that you were familiar with and how to do.
I mean, we're fortunate that we've had some good successes. Fortunate that we have a really awesome listener base, and even super fortunate that we have people that pay us monthly as a part of Patreon just to help support the show. It goes a long way to, the effort that it goes into just do this. This is the easy part. Recording is the easy part. It's everything else that's out. It's the logistics planning. It's the post processing. It's the marketing. It's making sure that people are listening to it. Like sitting down for 45 minutes and talking. It's the simple part.
Yeah,
it's
the
everything.
fun part.
It is. It's everything else after that. It's the grind, and you've just got to get through that. And there's burnout that comes along with it too. And you've got to overcome that. And it's just a process. But as a part of transitioning from a podcast into the bourbon side, we're learning the hard way of how this business works, how to deal with distributors, how to make and market a product. For us, it was great because we built the audience and then brought the brand, brought the product. But as we were kind of saying before, is that we've got to grow beyond. We've got to get into the minds of the people that don't listen to podcasts. We've got to get them to try.
But what's really good is, like you said, you didn't want to be Kentucky Old Carter. They were doing the blending and everything, and then you're looking at these $300, $250, and watching your podcast and the people who watch you. There's a lot of times where you really think the juice is good, but the money you're paying was always, so when you said that kind of hit home with me, is that you wanted to produce a good product with a reasonable price. You didn't want to go into that range because they had been doing it, and you already, your base of people had listened to you.
I mean, when you go to the liquor store and you go and you look at that glass case, how often are those same bottles sitting there on the shelf?
Yeah.
Right? There is right now, I feel that there's a fatigue and burnout that are happening from bourbon consumers. And that's because you see the producers that are trying to come out with these crazy LTOs and try to get people that are trying to chase after it. And you're gonna get that sale one time. You're not gonna get those people buying these bottles over.
There's not that many people who can afford that. One time.
Right. Yeah, and that's what. Yeah, you've got. I mean, a lot of people out there with way bigger pockets than us that could probably do it. But even them, like they're trying to try different things. They're not going to go and buy every single. And don't be wrong, Kentucky Owl, Ford Gate, they make fantastic products, but at that price point, like you have to have a very premium type of consumer that is going to be able to purchase that. We each figured like we've got to get a little more mass market out of it.
And you don't get a lot. I don't think you get the repeat buyers. Nobody's going to go buy 24 bottles of Kentucky Owl.
Yeah.
And
Well,
just,
maybe unless you work for Kentucky, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Then you'll just take them off the living.
They gave us 2 free ones.
Yeah.
There you
There we go.
But seriously, I mean, you're right. Price point. Like, if you're going to try and get some product out to the masses, I think you got to be between. I do think that we as a collective community are becoming desensitized to the $50 bottle. The $50 bottle is the everyday bottle.
It's coming that way. From what we've learned inside this industry and talking to a lot of people that are on the consulting side, they say $40 and less is your mass market, right? So that's how you get to the everyday consumer and stuff like that. But we knew that it would be really hard for us to make a decent margin in doing that. And we didn't, like I said, we looked at who was on the shelf next to us in their price points. And so we really compared ourselves to like Wilderness Trail, New Riff, and because they're all doing the same thing. They've got 4 to 5 year old whiskey that they're putting out, and they've got a relatively close price point. So we said if we can kind of utilize that as our goalpost and try to meet that, I think that's where we can be successful. And so that's why we're trying to build the brand in that way. And thankfully, we've got the podcast that can help be the marketing engine behind it as well.
Well, yeah, and that's really kind of cool. Now, from my standpoint, people, when you were doing your podcast, you would go into all the places and you get this back room access that most, when you walk in there, they show you everything. It's kind of like you get the extensive tour. You get to taste what they got on the side, like taste this before it's even bottled half the time. And it's a great thing to do. And then you meet the people in the industry, and if you really wanted to go into it, they would offer that you could probably have gone into the distilling, either one of you, the opportunities present themselves, right?
It's one of those things that Ryan and I, we both have careers outside the podcast, and that's what hopefully everybody knows. Like, this is not a full-time job for us.
Not
the
yet.
podcast, the bourbon brand, hopefully we'll get there. We still have our day jobs, which pays for healthcare and all things like that too. And so we didn't want to start our careers over, and we didn't want to go and do that because you know what it's like if you're already making a pretty good salary, if you want to go try a different career, well, you got to start from the bottom. Like, we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and we're media, we're talking heads. Like, we're not going to go and be distillers. That's not our job. We don't do that. So we want to just figure out kind of an angle for us that's going to be fun.
And that's what every time that I've thought of it just a little bit, I'm a plant manager at a recycling plant, okay? So a lot of the stuff that happens in the industry happens in recycling. It's the same kind of thing. Machinery, some of the machinery is exactly the same. Milling grain and grinding up plastic. It's almost the exact same machine, So it's like you see and then you also know they run into the same problems that I deal with every day. When they're broke down, you're not making distillate. It's just the same. So it was always something I was looking. But I'm having so much fun meeting them all, and then hanging out with them that I just wouldn't want to just go to one place and have all the same problems I already got.
Transferring one problem to somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly.
For less money.
Yeah.
All right, so that was very informative. I mean, for whatever little bit I didn't know, you filled it in there. I mean, that's
amazing.
Yeah.
It's a great story.
I appreciate it.
Yes.
That's right. I feel we have a very compelling story, something that's very unique, because we do. I mean, and like you always speak to an enthusiast audience. You're not listening to the Bourbon podcast because you're just like, I'm just going to read the news. No, like you're listening
It's a repeat of the Howard Stern show today.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes it gets like that.
And so we had to create a product that we knew would appeal to them. We couldn't come out with some young, grainy craft whiskey because we will get laughed at. Right? We had to compete a product that would compete with the big guys, and that's really what we were striving for.
Yeah, it has to be worthy of your name because you've been tasting for years. People rely on your palate.
Yeah,
and
so we want to make sure we can't disappoint them.
I also like the fact that you did use some Tennessee and you did use other places because that's where the market's growing even bigger and bigger, right? It's like people are going outside of Kentucky, even though you love Kentucky whiskey. You're a Kentucky whiskey podcast for the most part, right? But you spread out into bourbon a little bit, but initially you're here, so you have all that access. But by bringing that in, it makes other people look at that. Like, you weren't sure when you were first doing it. Now everybody's kind of looking at outside of everywhere.
Yeah, and that was, like I said, we had these relationships already kind of pre-done before we started the United Project. And we've taken stuff from Woodinville. I mean, there's just so much great bourbon that's created across the states that it kind of does a disservice to just say like, oh, it's Kentucky or nothing, right? So we want to make sure that we highlight a lot of these brands that are doing a lot of good stuff too, that are just outside of Kentucky, and being thankful that we can also include that as a part of our single barrel releases, as part of United as well. I think we can showcase that you don't have to just have one mash bill and 20 warehouses that create 70 different labels, right? You can create something that's very unique to you. We can do that as well.
That's cool. That's cool. The thing is United, and it's bringing everybody in, all the distilleries and stuff.
All right.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you
we
so
love
much for taking time out.
Yeah. I mean,
This busy
thank you for
Kentucky
coming on the
Bourbon
podcast.
Festival
I mean,
schedule.
it's
Yeah.
almost like a dream come true.
Yeah.
I mean, people are always watching you and whatever. but you never
He's
know.
talked about this, and me and him both. We've been waiting to talk to you and just get a chance.
Well, he's not going to tell you, but he's got an I love Kenny Coleman.
Yeah.
He's had him take it off.
Yeah,
today.
like what you do on The Price is Right. They go down.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, in his closet next to his I Love Randy Frazzy t-shirt.
I saw it hanging in there this
Yeah,
morning.
yeah.
Didn't want to say anything.
All right, I'm going to say thank you all to you all too. I mean, this is podcasting is not an easy thing. People think it's just a side gig. It's fun. It's a little hobby, but no, I mean, you got to treat it like a job, and you've got to make sure that you're consistent with it. And we kind of said earlier, this is the fun part, sitting down and talking. Beyond that, it's a grind, and you got to keep with it. And so, hats off to you all for continuing to do that and pushing out and making more content, because there's plenty of stories out there to tell that we can never get to. So making sure that we have even other people that are out there finding more stories and other angles of things we want to talk about is what's going to help grow the category and help us grow bourbon in general. So appreciate what you all are doing.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Right. Thank you.
All right. So that does it. We're the Scotchy Bourbon Boys. www.scotchybourbonboys.com. Check out Kenny Coleman on Bourbon Pursuit, and everybody knows where that is. It's YouTube on Main. They're everywhere. And make sure that you go out if you see a bottle of Pursuit United, pick that up. It's,
Yes,
we
definitely.
got to taste it while we're here. Delicious. You're doing a good job.
All right, thank you so much. Yeah, so Colorado, Georgia, Illinois, where we at? New Mexico, Ohio, Tennessee, Texas, and Kentucky. Plus online at sealbox.com. So all those different regions.
Excellent.
Awesome.
All right.
Great.
That takes us out. Let's have little Steve-O finish it up.
Oh, show me the way to the next whiskey bar. Oh, don't ask why. Oh, don't ask why. Show me the way to the next whiskey bar. Oh, don't ask why. Oh, don't ask why. For if we don't find the next whiskey bar, I tell you we must die. I tell you we must die. I tell you we must die.
Drinking bourbon, sipping on some scotch. We get a little wild, but it's sure fun to watch. We love what we do, we're drinking every brew. Man, we talk some shit, but we're telling the
Hey, Scotchy Bourbon Boys fans, this is Alan Bishop, Indiana's alchemist of the Black Forest. So I'm tuning in here today to tell you all about the One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute channel on YouTube. If you're at all interested in the art of distilling, whether it be home distilling or professional distilling, and the intense geekery that goes into that process, then check out the One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute on YouTube. I promise you're going to learn something you didn't know before about the art.